images for this because they will put you off your lunch, so they're not the nicest kind of logical patient files with photographs as well, so you'll thank me, I think. This is actually from the book that Alison's just mentioned, and it's not just about surgeons, and I've been advised to change the title to add patients to that title. So this is part of that work, but also part of the work that I'm continuing to work on, which is the experience of the surgical patient. So in similar fashion, I'm hoping to give you a different image of the working class patient slightly later, we've been looking at the moment, and a very different image of the Royal Free, hopefully, from the one we had earlier. As the location for clinical studies of the London School of Medicine for Women students and the first British general institution not run by medical women to appoint female staff in 1902, the Royal Free Hospital provides the historian with a unique insight into how a generation of early female doctors interacted with their patients. Surviving case notes for gynecological surgeons Mary Sharley, Ethel Vaughan Sawyer and Lady Frank Barrett span the period from 1902 to 1919 and allow a rare glimpse into the lives of more than 3,500 largely working class women who sought hospital treatment during the first 2 decades of the early 20th century. The reaction of the actual patient to surgery is rarely considered in the history of medicine, and such a study certainly permits a refutation of the old tale that women were passive and preyed upon. Indeed, women were active participants in decisions over their health and welfare. The experience of the patient in case notes has inevitably been filtered, as histories were taken by practitioners on behalf of patients and follow a distinct format. This moves from a history of symptoms, the physical examinations by medical and surgical personnel, treatment and discharge. However, it is still possible to hear clearly the voice of the individual patient through the narrative, through direct quotations as well as their actions. To take just a few examples, there are so many case notes, I'm just going to have to pick out some, I'm afraid, so apologies for that. To take a few examples, in 1910, Louisa Figg's pain was such that she felt she should go mad and suffocate, while 2 years later, Clark Ethel Court described 20 years of suffering as so bad that she would frequently contemplate suicide. In 1906, when Alice Reynolds miscarried her 8th child after nursing one of the other 7, the frustration of the note-taker with her polite and positive responses, belying the physical evidence of her actual condition, was palpable. Patient looks very pale and exhausted, but expresses herself as feeling very comfortable. The patient says she feels stronger and better every day, but she still looks extremely pale. She still looked exceedingly anemic and ill, but expressed herself as feeling quite well and gaining strength daily. Patients were frustratingly evasive, anxious or verbose, inarticulate and confused, unable to remember with any precision their symptoms or the intricacies of their family history. Clinical reality is messy, bloody and painful, especially on gynecological wards, and patients suffer very noisily. There is also a difference between what practitioners expected and what patients provided. In the form of a question addressed by a student, to a student by an examiner, a dialogue from the Heard at Hospital series of the London School of Medicine for Women magazine ran as follows. What is the difference between symptoms and signs? Answer. A symptom is what the patient thinks is the matter with him. A sign is what really is. Symptoms could be described even if they were not felt, but signs were seen, legible only to the medical professional. Symptoms could be ignored, signs never. Both could be misleading, however, as Alice Reynolds' case proved. In a number of recent articles focusing on surgery in the late 19th and early 20th century, Sally Wilde has advocated reconceptualising clinical encounters in a far more detailed manner than the predictable duality of the doctor-patient relationship will allow. Patients were autonomous, made decisions about their treatment, were influenced by a number of factors outside the advice of their practitioners, and gambled upon still faltering procedures working successfully. Professionals, meanwhile, were uncertain about the outcomes of their experimental surgical practice and by no means in control of patients, who requested operative treatment independently of their judgments. An intensive study of case records at the RFH indicates that women were more than capable of being obstinate as far as their health and its maintenance was concerned. They were also choosy about their treatment, whatever the purported medical or surgical benefit. Female patients were willing to listen to advice, but they would not always take it up. In the end, and this is precisely why case studies provide such a frustrating but also so intriguing a resource, they were more likely to do exactly what suited them as an individual, rather than what had succeeded or not for the person in the next bed. So this paper today is going to examine some of the ways in which female surgical patients, in all their many guises, negotiated their time in the world free. So by focusing on the private encounter rather than public court cases that we've heard about more today, a different picture can be built up of quotidian patient resistance in the early 20th century. There's only time to explore a few examples, unfortunately, so I'm going to consider those who refused treatment and those who treated themselves. Both are especially important because of the much vaunted belief in a symbiosis between medical women and their female patients. The former had argued from the outset that their empathetic understanding of female suffering would allow their patients to submit more willingly to examination and treatment without fear. This was especially important in gynecological cases where passivity, prudery and sheer terror characterised the potential for invasive, instrumental examination. See why I haven't added any pictures. Such an attitude exercised those keen to encourage the early diagnosis of one of the most feared diseases of the early 20th century, cancer. In a discussion on measures recommended to secure the earlier recognition of uterine cancer during the British Medical Association meeting of August 1907, gynecological surgeons lamented the modesty and dread of female working-class patients who shrink from examination or even refuse to submit to it. Their failure to acknowledge the presence of obvious symptoms and tardy consultation in turn affected the public's perception of curing cancer. Some women did not, for a variety of reasons, seek advice in time or refuse to be treated. In 1908, Mary A. Newland insisted that if she was suffering from cancer, she would not be operated upon as her husband would not allow it. Why precisely Mr. Newland objected to cancer surgery was not further noted, but his wife was indeed and unfortunately suffering from extensive carcinoma of the cervix. Annie Tompkins also registered her husband's unwillingness that she undergo an operation if her case should prove malignant. When it did, she remarked that she too did not want an operation. So such cases indicate the limitation of individual patient choice, especially as far as malignancies were concerned. And there are some horrible, horrible cases across this period of women who do not consult in time. Ruth Barden's initial refusal to allow a doctor to examine her vaginally and the 2-month delay before she consulted female advice at the Bermondsey Medical Mission ensured that when the latter swiftly dispatched her to the Royal Free for operative treatment, a cancer of the cervix had spread extensively and become quite inoperable. She discharged herself the day after admission when informed that nothing could be done for her. Mary Rose did not follow medical advice. After a severe attack of abdominal pain in August 1908, Mrs. Rose went to Clapham Maternity Hospital and they sent her on to gynecological outpatients at the Royal Free. There she was diagnosed with suspected fibroids but was told to keep attending this clinic so an eye could be kept on her condition. She failed to do so. When Mrs. Rose finally returned to outpatients in 1909, her situation was severe enough for admission. She was discovered to have ovarian cancer, which had spread to her pelvis, described as choked with growth in her nose and her liver. Arabella Gower had refused a kidney operation at Guy's in 1895. 13 years later, with surgery for carcinoma of the cervix just possible, she declined again. Others, however, when presented with the possibility of cure, unlike Mrs. Gower and against the stereotype, wished for it very strongly. Despite the risks, because of bronchitis, which rendered her not a good subject for lengthy surgery under anaesthesia, in 1913 Elizabeth Tranter expressed great anxiety to be operated upon for cancer of the cervix. In this case, patient desire overrode surgical scepticism. While she survived the operation and was in excellent condition throughout the procedure, she died 4 days later from heart failure. Only 3 of Ethel Vaughan Sawyer's patients in the first 2 decades of the 20th century refused an operation for cancer, however, That's just 1.7% of the total number seen and diagnosed with malignant disease. If women were condemned as reluctant to consult in time, then it's hard to see, in this instance, how they could be castigated for not trying to help themselves, even if the outcome might be uncertain when difficult and dangerous surgery was the only answer. Although she was 73 and one of the oldest patients seen, Elizabeth Macaulay was informed by Lady Barrett in 1908 that her condition, cancer of the uterine body, could be improved by a serious operation. Upon reflection, the patient agreed. There was no hope of a cure, but a palliative procedure was enough for the patient. Here, evident consultation between surgeon and patient resulted in a shared decision to carry out a life-extending, if not a life-saving, operation. And there are debates in patient notes about whether surgery should be carried out or not, and it's important to realise that. For others, however, surgery was not so welcome an option. Resistance in this instance stemmed from an idiosyncratic list of reasons. I could go on for ages about the number of reasons that people said, I'm not going to undergo an operation. Fanny Ashewitz took a year to be admitted as an inpatient because she was unable to find anyone to look after her children. So it's important to realise that these women have a lot of children, awful lot of children, and they have to find someone to look after them large numbers of times. Some discharged themselves after admission and before surgery. Refusal to be put under any form of anaesthesia was one of the most prominent reasons for premature discharge from the hospital. In the 1909 surgical anaesthesia, H. Bellamy Gardner reassured his readers that the sex and age of those undergoing vaginal procedures, between 20 and 45, rendered them comparatively easy to anaesthetise, but this wasn't borne out by the reaction of gynecological patients of Royal Free. Neither would the possible seriousness of the patient's condition prevent departure if the only way that anything could be done for them would be under sedation. In 1908, Mary Gunn, and a 43-year-old widow Cook was one example. She was diagnosed as having suspected carcinoma of the uterus because of her appearance, as well as irregular bleeding, abdominal pain, and loss of flesh. Initial exploration had proved difficult because the patient was so ill and too tender to touch. Consequently, Mary Charlie wanted to perform an examination under anaesthetic in order to ascertain whether or not her initial suspicions were correct, and simultaneously remove curetings from the uterus, which could be sent to the pathology department to determine diagnosis microscopically. What Mrs. Gunn objected to was not the operation per se, but, as was specifically noted, examination under anaesthetic. She left without any solid diagnosis being made. 20-year-old single Taylorist Bertha Finkelstein was the most contrary patient as far as the acceptance of anaesthesia was concerned. Initially, she objected to any examination without anaesthesia, but when the time came for her to undergo an investigation, she refused any anaesthetic and was discharged. A further attack of pain changed her mind, and she was readmitted, finally accepting both examination and anaesthetic. And you do have people leaving the hospital and just come back a day later because they've realised they actually do need something done. Deaths from anaesthesia still occurred at the beginning of the 20th century, and popular mistrust would have made patients nervous about the administration. As Ian Burney has noticed, anaesthesia was more institutionally grounded than ever before, but at the same time vulnerable to the charge that, half a century of experience notwithstanding, it remained a dangerous and unreliable practice. Only one patient died from the effects of anaesthesia in the 2 decades considered here, 15-year-old Gladys Perks from chloroform poisoning in 1910. Others were, however, legibly affected by anaesthesia or the operative process itself, and this must have caused some consternation to those awaiting their own procedures on the ward. The majority was sick, but some suffered from physical injuries such as burns, blisters, and sores. Such small, slight injuries might not be significant in comparison with the major surgery which patients underwent, but they would have caused women additional suffering during a time for recuperation, as well as worrying others on the ward about the process they were about to undergo. In the gynecological case notes, it's precisely the non-acceptance of physical discomfort and the problems attending what should have been straightforward examinations which dominated patient histories. At the RFH, women might have been privileged to be under their own sex, but they still objected to and resisted the ways in which they were treated if it did not meet their expectations. A gynecological examination was necessarily invasive and mostly instrumental, beyond the usual palpation and percussion, so it is not surprising that many were disgruntled by the process, even if it was carried out by a medical attendant of their own sex. 20-year-old General Servant Eliza Love's reaction to examination in 1904 was mentioned as being very quiet. That's the only time that anyone's mentioned as being very quiet across the whole of the notes that we looked at. Allowing herself to be examined without rigidity. This is evidently unusual to this vital part of understanding the cause of gynecological conditions. More often than not, patients resisted, either deliberately or because their circumstances ensured that examinations were made extremely difficult. Physical resistance was encountered frequently by those treating the patients of the RFH. Touch, even when carried out delicately, caused some to react strongly. In 1905, Florence Bromley, a 22-year-old married woman, was so very intolerant of examination that she resisted both at outpatients and then when admitted to the ward. As a consequence, examination was incomplete and the patient was discharged to be watched at outpatients. In 1910, 39-year-old Gertrude Towson was perceived by the staff as extremely neurotic. This does appear quite a lot in the notes, especially in relation to nurses, which is interesting, nurse patients. So much so that she came out in a rash when examined. In 1915, both Clara Abraham and Ada Stone held themselves so rigidly that they were difficult to examine. The latter refused to have her abdomen opened and was discharged. Tamar Hilliard's body was hard to explore because her abdomen was vibrating and pulsating due to nervousness. In 1910, Maud Upton was much agitated by examination. Very fat or very thin women were equally complicated. The blame in Susan Carter's case for her being extremely difficult to examine was attributed both to the amount of fat present, but also because she obstructed vaginal exploration by holding her thighs tightly together. Examining a squirming or rigid patient was not an easy task. The fact that women inpatients were being seen by their own sex did not make a difference to those who were resistant, either deliberately or through no fault of their own, to physical examination. Fears of the possible cost involved in seeing a doctor, or the time wasted sitting in hospital outpatient departments. I think that's something we need to realise, that people do spend a lot of time sitting in hospital outpatient departments, or even the distress of the possibility of hospitalisation kept women from seeking medical assistance. The sheer unpleasantness of a situation they would rather keep to themselves, or in some cases, the illegality of what they needed to do in order to obtain relief, also characterised several cases. Large numbers, if you're slightly squeamish in this section, like close your ears, okay? Large numbers of women attended the hospital when prolapsed uteruses could no longer be put back by themselves. In 1914, Margaret Riley sought help only when she was unable to replace her uterus herself after 14 years of prolapse. At outpatients, coils of bowel were found to be descending too. 5 years earlier, Clara Hughes had treated herself with TERPs, rubbed onto her abdomen in order to ease the abdominal pain she had been experiencing. Unfortunately, all that resulted was sores and blisters. Alcohol or drugs were other measures to which some turned in order to numb the pain. Miriam Silverstone, a nurse, was a morphine and despite several attempts at treatment, was still addicted to the drug. Interestingly, she also gave her address as Hammond Lodge, a home for female alcoholics. Dorothy Temblett, formerly a popular stage actress, and I do actually have an image of Dorothy Temblett in her finery from a postcard, so she's a pretty famous actress at this point, had drunk regularly for 5 years, mostly whiskey, and had also been taking morphia off and on since an accident in which she had suffered bad burns to her arms from a gas stove explosion. This is probably one of the most disturbing cases that I've come across. After being castigated at the age of 13 for her large, potentially pregnant abdomen, Clara Cushion had tried to drown herself in a canal. When this didn't work, she burst something inside her through pressing her abdomen as hard as she could. Such dramatic interventions were part of a thread of abortion attempts which weave their way through patient narratives. In public, women might have been reluctant to proclaim that they had attempted abortion, which was regarded with respect to opinion the same follows infanticide perhaps, but private consultation with medical and surgical practitioners elicited a very different narrative and offered a stark insight into the desperate lengths some women were prepared to go to regulate their families. Women are exceptionally open about what they've done in the past in order to do this. In 4 years of marriage, Sarah Barnett had had 4 children and most certainly did not wish for another. she calmly noted that she passed a glass syringe into her vagina to induce abortion. She underwent a panhysterectomy because of the peritonitis caused by her action, so successful as far as she's concerned. Lillian Walker was told of her pregnancy at Gate, the Royal Free Hospital's casualty department, in 1910. She promptly returned home and instantly passed a knitting needle 2 or 3 times into her vagina. Additionally, she took 5 or 6 different drugs in gin with the intent to procure abortion. These are her words. Although she had only 1 child, Mrs. Walker had tried unsuccessfully to abort it as well. In 1913, Emily Franklin, who was 33 and married with 6 children, admitted taking a couple of penny royal pills just before she miscarried. She further acknowledged having taken the same number when she lost another child the year before. 2 years before, she had brought on a premature birth at 6 months by lifting heavy weights. The child then died. Others did not give us much information about their background, but their physical condition led to a diagnosis. In 1904, fear of the consequences of an attack by a patient perhaps encouraged Dorothy Neal, a nurse at Colney Hatch, to introduce a long, narrow, sharp and pointed instrument into her vagina. Before she was examined, the note-taker expressed frustration at this slightly hysterical woman who burst into tears when questioned about the accident, which apparently involved a patient kicking her in the abdomen. Only closer inspection under anaesthetic revealed internal injuries inconsistent with an external blow. Others were unable to discuss the reasons behind their circumstances because their actions were lethal. 2 cases where treatment had been procured but not properly administered stand out to warn of the dangers of self-medication. Although she did not want to prevent conception, long-standing invalid Annie Cox, who was very delicate and had always lived at home, sought to ease her pain by inserting a menstrual cone inside her vagina. An abscess formed around the cone, and Miss Cox died of septic peritonitis in 1904 after surgical removal of the object. The most shocking case was that of Constance Webb, and Constance Webb is a pseudonym, or might have been a real name. There are 2 names for this person. Her 1908 notes queried a criminal abortion. This is the only one that queries a criminal abortion. When she was opened up by Mary Sharley, twin fetuses were discovered, covered in a white powdered substance which also appeared in the vaginal vault. Mrs. Webb's abdomen was described as almost gangrenous, offensive gas escaping as she was operated upon. Despite the removal of her uterus and right ovary, Constance Webb died. Bruising was later found on her arms and right hip, suggesting that she had been held down while the procedure was performed. While doctors' fees might be saved or personal embarrassment bypassed, or even another mouth to feed destroyed, some of the cases seen indicated that not everyone who tried to medicate themselves was successful in achieving their ends. Even if they did ensure that conception would be no longer possible, as in the case of Constance Webb, whose generative organs were surgically removed, they might not live to experience or benefit from the consequences of their drastic actions. This is just a tiny glimpse into the absolutely fascinating resource at the Royal Free Hospital. Female patients were from all backgrounds, of all ages, and of varying willingness to be treated. Despite arguments about women's suitability for examining female patients, very few had sought out assistance from their own sex until they entered institutions, and only one, in all of them, expressed, Florence Brazier in 1915, expressed the fact she'd refused to have been examined by a male doctor. No one else says that. Case notes, though composed in another hand, allow the patient's voice to be heard, often loudly and clearly, through their opinions about their health, their account of the trajectory of their illness, and all the idiosyncrasies expressed throughout their time in hospital. They also permit a more personalised insight into how the layperson viewed the medical profession, and specifically their reaction to the surgical advances which had characterised the previous half-century. Not all female patients wanted to be helped surgically, regardless of the sex of their surgeon.